The other places I would drink would be not bars, but was the punk scene. Art and I were hanging out with all these people, so we would drink at the Vats. That was an old, I think it was the old Falstaff Brewery over south of Market, kind of towards the Mission. And they had all these vats that they would rent out, and all the punk bands like, MDC, DRI was there. The Dead Kennedys had their own joint. The Slug Lords were there because I was one of their, I think I was their last guitar player.
That was cartoonist Jaime Crespo. I'm Jeff, and this is Storied San Francisco. Today, he's a successful and prolific artist living in Alameda. But in this podcast, Jaime shares the first part of his life story. His mom was Yaqui Yoeme and born in northern Mexico. She came to LA and then Sacramento, where she met Jaime's dad. She left there with her 4-year-old son and came to San Francisco. The pair went back to Sacramento, where Jaime finished school. After a short time playing music and goofing off, he decided to move back to the city with some friends. Here's Jaime.
Oh, my birth. Okay, well, my parents had sex. Now, let me explain how that works to you kids. My mother was from northern Mexico, and she's a Yaqui, or Yoeme, and she came to California, LA, when she was like around 10-ish. Her and my uncle was a couple years younger.
Do you know about what year that was?
Oh, that'd be the 30s, like the mid-30s, right around the height of the Depression, just before it all, finally got solved, I guess, or whatever, for whatever purpose it got solved. I don't know. Yeah. So she came up from then, or came from Mexico then, and her and my uncle, and they didn't speak much Spanish, and they spoke no English. Because they were Yaquis, and they're of the last generation, from what I understand, that where that was still, from Sonora. They were pretty isolated in some senses. Also, they were anti-Spanish, anti-Mexican government. They didn't get conquered. It was them, and I think who was it down southern, like the Zapotecs or somebody. They still speak their own languages, but I guess because proximity to the border, the Yaquis, it's different because everybody,
And I'm guessing to the colonizer mind, like if you didn't live in a resource-rich or, other, like if you lived in a part of the world where that the white people didn't want,
right,
they might have left you alone.
They might have left you alone. I do know for Cinco de Mayo, when the French were tossed out of Mexico, the French did approach the Yaqui to help the southern United States during the Civil War to defeat the North. And then they said, if you help us do that, then we'll help you get rid of the Spaniards. So the Yaqui agreed. Okay. But their agreement wasn't because yeah, great. So we'll get rid of those guys. And when you come down, you get rid of the Spanish, then we're going to get rid of you. So I was like, so my relatives. That's so, yeah. It's like, yeah. Flat up, pendejo, you're gone. So, she came up, and she was in in East LA, as I said, and with my uncle. And then her mom got deported, my grandmother, back to Mexico. So she was left with actually Spaniards, family, friends of hers, and they treated her, my uncle, like chattel slave. I mean, they owned a restaurant, so my mom missed out on a lot of school because she was working in the restaurant while their kids got to go. It was almost like a Disney movie in a weird way. I mean, it really was, and not in the good part. She didn't get the good ending.
Dark Disney.
Yeah, dark Disney, the dark web Disney, snuff Disney. But anyway, then my father, he is a Spanish and Portuguese origin, and that's why I physically favor. He started out in Hilo, Hawaii, and then they came to San Francisco and then Sacramento. And then my mom's mom, who came back over the border, married a black man, my step-grandfather. Okay. And it's not too convoluted. Keep following. And they owned cafes and little hotels and stuff. And then they sold them and buy another one and keep it for a while. Then they moved to Sacramento, and he finally sold everything and bought a cafe there. And then they got a hold of my mom. My uncle already split for the Navy because he couldn't hang living with that family. And my mother went up with her mom. Then she died a couple years later, sadly, in a robbery of something. My grandmother.
Your grandmother, okay.
Yeah. So then, as time went on, after my mom met my dad and I was born, My dad was abusive. That's how we ended up in San Francisco when I was 4. I started school in San Francisco. I started kindergarten, first grade, most of second.
Okay.
And then we moved back to Sacramento, and then my dad died, and we lived with my grandfather, my step-grandfather, and his new wife, my step-grandmother. So I was living with these elderly black folks from Louisiana in a predominantly black neighborhood, and then I moved back and forth between that neighborhood and my mom's neighborhood in Sacramento. About a year or so after high school, I moved back to San Francisco.
Okay.
So
you like started school in San Francisco,
Mm-hmm.
and then at some point finished school in Sacramento.
Yeah. Finished. Yeah. And then I went to like a couple years of community college, and then I said I'm out of here, and I moved to San Francisco and with a childhood friend of mine, and then we all moved around and did stuff, and how things go.
Let's talk about, because you said you were 4 or 5 that first time y'all moved to San Francisco? 4.5-ish.
So
you must remember it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I definitely remember it.
Let's hear those first memories of the city.
Oh, well, the first memories, going there was terrifying in some ways, and it was sad because we just left, my little nuclear family, right? So we were there, but it was, it was different. I wasn't used to all the concrete at first, because I was used to being around, areas, even though it was poor, we had open fields back then. And, there was the broken glass and the abandoned car here and there, but it was a lot of adventure you can go do. Yeah. In the city, it just had a little bit of different vibe from what I remember. I remember starting kindergarten there, and there was a group of boys in that class that, they didn't like me. Well, it was kind of interesting. I noticed they didn't like me and a couple of the Asian kids and the black kid in our class. They were really bullies to all of us. So, but I remember hating that. And then I made friends with this kid, Joe Fong, who lived down the street from us, because we lived at a friend's of my mom's. I don't know how she got there. This British lady. I don't know how she knew her. Yeah, she was older.
I don't know how these things happen, but
no, I'm a little kid. I'm just kind of you gotta go where the food is, right? So, yeah.
The food and the fun.
Yeah. So we stayed with them just for a couple months,
Okay.
and it was in a nice neighborhood too. It was over by Marina Junior High, so Chestnut.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, it was really nice. But then my mom worked at a beauty salon. She was always a beautician in the Mission, and I went to the Catholic school. What the hell's the name of it? It's out on the rim of the Mission. But anyway, one of her coworkers found a better place for us out there, like a little 1-bedroom with a Murphy bed and all that. So the house is gone now. I tried to find it a few years ago. We were on Florida between 19th and 20th.
Okay.
The old mayonnaise factory used to be there back in the ancient days. And my house, and I think the houses on either side, maybe we're the end one. There's 3 houses that are gone, and it's just a big apartment monolith now right there. It looks nice, but it's, kind of weird. You go down there. Yeah, my house is right about. It's not there no more. Okay.
So
what is it?
Dark Disney.
Yeah. So more of that, kids.
Would this have been rough, like late 60s?
Mid 60s, actually. Summers of Love, all that time period. So.
You're young. Do you remember any?
I remember seeing hippies on the bus. My mom, we took a bus because we did the 14 Mission a lot, and took us to downtown and stuff. But I don't know what neighborhood we were in, but my mom's like, look at those hippies, she just didn't like them.
Long hairs?
No, that wasn't in her vernacular. Yeah, just hippies or hippies. Yeah. So, yeah, it was interesting. I mean, by that point though, I kind of made some friends, mostly in the neighborhood. I was the only kid going to Catholic school in that neighborhood, so my Tomas and I can't remember his little brother's name. I think it was Ruben. Were across the street, and they were from. This is a funny story. They were born in the city. Their parents are from Nicaragua in the 60s, so there was still other Latinos. Now, being from California, hell, from Texas, you can relate to this. I don't think so much Seattle, but anybody Latino back in the 60s and stuff, you're either Mexican or Mexican American, man. There's no Cuban. Oh, that's Ricky Ricardo, right? Or what's his name on Chico and the Man? The Puerto Rican guy, Freddie Prinze. So meeting them, I remember they saying, "So where are your parents from?" "Oh, we're going." I remember they said, "We're going Christmas. We're going back to Nicaragua." I'm like, "Well, what part of Mexico is that?" I didn't even know. I thought it's like right near Zacatecas.
Yeah.
So no, it's so it was. But they were great. They were a cool family. They were right across the street. Their house is still there.
That first time in SF, how long did it last?
Couple of years. I mean, I did kindergarten, first grade, and good portion of second, so I guess over 2 years.
Do you remember any like restaurants, shops?
Doggy diner, dude. That was Friday nights, man. If mom was doing well, we're on the bus and wherever the doggy diner closest to us was. And we're getting the fries and a little hamburger and the dog head outside was just fascinating to me. The Hungry Hippo was another place up on, because I used to eat there in the 80s before they closed it. It was on Van Ness at Pacific, right across from Winchell's Donuts.
Oh.
They used to be there. I used to eat Winchell's. They had that in Sacramento too. So
Right.
yeah.
Not Hungry Hippo.
No.
What was that?
It is diner food.
Just
Yeah.
fries.
Yeah. A little more on the ball, I would say, than say Doggy Diner.
Right.
A little bit more, So
Did y'all go to Giants games, 49ers, any of that stuff?
I went not 49ers. I went to this guy named Mario, Italian dude. I don't know if they owned it or what. The little market was he liked my mom. So he took me to my first 3 Giants games.
Okay.
So, and I remember the first game. I don't remember how. I know we probably went in his car. I just remember the green grass. I remember we played the Cubs. I didn't know it was Chicago Cubs. I just knew it was the Cubs because of the name. They're the little Bears, right? And the Giants lost, but I got to see my hero, Willie Mays, hit a home run that day.
Whose birthday, I believe, is tomorrow.
I think you're right.
90.
Yeah.
He will be 90.
Yeah. Well, he did no wrong.
No. We'll have to take some pictures of that.
Yeah. Well,
An action figure, I guess?
yeah, it is with a bat and everything. And then up there is my son gave me that as a gift because he knows he's a hardcore Giants fan too.
Yeah.
So we have photos of us at games. It's multi-generational now. So
Do you remember, because like everyone, I never get to see the Giants at the Stick, but like everyone's, the wind, the cold,
oh yeah.
all that stuff.
The worst food, the Harry, whatever his name was, Harry Shear, not Harry Shear, but it was with an S. Harry, some of the worst food you could have for stadiums. That's why I like to go into A's games for food.
Yeah.
And the A's were my American League team. They were, but I was a Giants fan because they were here first. And when I was seeing the Giants, A's were still in Kansas City. They weren't even here yet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was a one baseball,
Right.
Northern
They
California.
68?
68, yeah.
Okay, this is right before that.
Yeah. So
Wow,
I was
okay.
there like in 66.
Okay. Do you want to talk about any of that? So you moved back to Sacramento.
Right.
Is there any good stories you want to share from that? Or
Good stories. Well, it was nice being back.
those are formative years, right? Teenage years, all that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was back as a little kid, so in grade school, beginning of grade school, and I ended up at the school, El Dorado School. The building's still there. It's this old 2-story Spanish adobe style with a tile roof and all that. And it stopped being a school, though, in 1975. But the building's still there. And that, for me, I went the rest second grade all the way through 6th. That was that. I'm still friends with a lot of kids from there. We're still friends to this day. So,
So this would have been getting into the early 70s?
Yeah, we graduated there in 73. And it went K through 6th grade.
Okay.
So that was the old school. And then the junior high was a block away. Kit Carson Junior High, the Pioneers. I remember had to run laps when I was on the 7th grade baseball team because they handed us our hats and the school colors were orange and brown.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And I looked at
Like
the
the Cleveland Browns, I think, have that.
Yeah, but
It's not unheard of, but it's like...
yeah, well, I made the crack. Ooh, we working at A&W after this or something like that. And then Crespo, run a lap, So I heard that a lot.
Were you already playing baseball at
Yeah.
7th grade?
Yeah. Oh,
And,
yeah.
like, you dug it?
Yeah, I loved it. Yeah.
What positions did you...
I did a lot of outfield because I was quick and had an arm, but I'd back up second base and pitch. If everybody would pitch just about. Well, not everybody, but certain kids. And I caught on towards the end, like when you said 12 or so, like in Major League, that, if you a decent player, but if you were also a decent pitcher, you're on the All-Star team.
Right.
So, yeah, it wasn't until high school I started playing. I did 2 years where I played baseball all year long. I played high school ball, Legion ball in the summer, and then fall ball. So I remember my mom saying, "Yeah, he's only home like December and January. That's it. I was gone the rest of the time."
Well, I feel like California lends itself to that.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. A lot of ball players, tons.
Totally.
Yeah, and I'm from the end of that era too, where it was, it was just kind of what you did. I mean, skating had hit. I got in a lot of trouble because I was hardcore into skating in high school,
Okay.
playing baseball. So, coaches were like, hey, you shouldn't be on there. You're going to break your leg or your arm and da-da-da-da. And I go,
You'll never get injured playing baseball.
yeah, exactly. And, of course, I was a smart ass. I won't get hurt, So,
And then you did.
well, I never broke anything, but, I got skating pools. Oh, my God. I remember trying to learn aerials. That was, yeah, I still have, this part of the tooth is still. Anyway, yeah.
How was your bat?
Oh, I was a leadoff hitter. Okay. Yeah, I was a sprayer,
Oh, outfield and leadoff.
Yeah.
Were you a base stealer?
Yeah, I was fast, but I could see. I was playing Pop Warner football too, for a while, and then I played 1 year of high school football, and that was it for me. Yeah. The Pop Warner, again, it was an all-black team except for me and the Hawaiian quarterback, and it was a state championship team. They won 6 years. I was in the middle 3 years. I had to work my way up to a starting position. But it was a different culture there because we were just kids. Because everybody there, played baseball or basketball as well. And everybody was into wrestling. And I don't mean collegiate. I mean wrestling on TV, wrestling and monster movies and all the kid stuff. So it was real relatable. It was just kind of we all met playing football. But then you find out oh, you're into model cars too. Me too. It was that kind of thing. And then when I got to high school, that's where he said, oh, you're going to be a cop. You know what I mean? It was yeah, because you're a bully. Right. I could see it now. You're going to kill people and get away with it. Yeah.
Did you need me to sign anything?
Yeah. Oh, man, I hated that culture. I hung out with the wrestlers, actually, for sports guys. I didn't wrestle, but I hung out with...
So now we're talking about the collegiate style.
Collegiate style. Because the wrestlers, at least in my high school, were all A, they were all smart. And B, they were all into wrestling was their vehicle. They enjoyed it, but to get elsewhere. Because this is an inner city school. Right. So they were, my best friend, Morris Johnson, who's no longer with us, we met in art class. Phenomenal painter. Ended up being an Olympic wrestler. Makes the Olympic team in 80. Wow. We didn't go. Yeah. Makes, Russia, right? Made the 84 team. Pops a rib. Can't go. Pop 2 ribs. His substitute goes and gets a gold. Insult injury. But he ended up being a PhD family and child psychologist, graduated from Temple. Yeah. Jeez. Yeah, he was a great guy. I was just listening his song was he loved Steely Dan. His song was Peg. Oh yeah. So anytime I hear Peg, I'm like, I miss my friend. I introduced him to his wife in high school, the whole 9. She was in my science class.
So,
yeah.
I think you said a couple years after you graduated high school?
Yeah.
Was that when you came back to San Francisco?
Yeah.
What was that decision like? Was it kind of a no-brainer? Or was it
it was definitely a no-brainer. I wanted to go to New York.
Okay.
New York is where I wanted to go. I was out there the year or so before with friends of my brothers from the Army.
Why New York or San Francisco?
Oh, come on, man. Sacramento. Why Fort Worth or, of course.
I know, but
yeah.
Let's hear what 19-year-old Jaime thought.
That's funny. That's the age, too. 19-year-old Jaime hung out with 20-year-old Arturo Arias, who's still my dear friend. He lives outside Philly now. We were both in bands together, and we had, I don't know if I sent you Los Punkers.
That sounds familiar.
The little,
Yes.
The 24-hour comic. Yeah. That's Art. Yeah, Art and I did that. And we both thought we would move, to the Bowery and hang out with Iggy and Johnny Thunders. And, I was a big, I was just listening for, I'm a big Mink DeVille fan, so I thought I'd, be the next Willie DeVille or something. And, we just kind of romanticized all that, the whole Basquiat and, all the art scene and the whole thing. And
music.
Yeah. So, because I do play, that's closets full of instruments. I used to be a musician. I am still, but I just don't play.
Back in those days?
We had bands, but then when I got to the city, I thought I'd be the next Muddy Waters. But I ended up playing 1,000 forgetful punk bands and R&B bands and all sorts of stuff. Because I liked playing. I just liked playing. And I liked punk, but I didn't. It was... See, I'm already digressing, but by the mid-'80s, I noticed the next group of kids that came up behind me started at punk rock, and I noticed what a bunch of narrow-minded fucks they are. Yeah, so it was like... did I send you the comic that had the picture of me riding in the story of me riding in the van with a band that, we had, you pick your music, and we had a boombox. So they always were listening back like MDC, DRI, all the initial bands, and which I liked actually. A lot of Black Flag, which was cool, and then the ones I hated was a lot of hair metal band. Like I'm sorry, I just don't like Motley Crue. Never have, never will. So I never cared for that music. It was cartoony stuff, and but I would bring, and I wasn't being funny, I'd bring like Stevie Wonder songs in the key of life, or I'd have like my Lowrider Oldies mixtape and stuff, and they just couldn't hang, And I'm like, that generation just couldn't hang. And I remember they told me, dude, we're just not into this.
Because they're pure.
Yeah. Like, it's Jaime's turn. You can hear almost the collective, like, because it's like my turn. What's he going to put on next? So.
I'm guessing years later they were probably like, oh shit.
Yeah. Yeah, or they probably forgot about me. They're like, oh, yeah, I was always into this. In fact, I was in a van, and this guy hated it, or something. So who knows?
So why didn't you guys move to New York? Do you remember?
Oh, my mom,
Too far?
Yeah, it was way too far, and I sold my car, and I figured, if I got to come home to see my mom, it's going to take a few days.
Yeah.
We're San Francisco. I've done it. I could get from San Francisco to Sacramento in 4 hours just using a bus.
Right.
So that was my logic. And I didn't hold it against her. I was like, I'll go here. It's cool.
It's not a bad place.
Yeah, and I know people there already, so.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
So when you made that decision to move, was it like, I'm going to move in with friends, or did you have to find a place? Or
I moved in with my childhood friend, and these are the pre-internet days. Some board listed Sac State, I think is where he went at that time, had like, rides to, whatever, to Seattle, apartment, looking for roommates in San Francisco. So he found one of those.
Okay.
And so one of the guys that was going there was staying in a town outside of Sacramento, something like Rockland. And I'm still friends with that guy, Mike Basil, who's a professor up in Canada now. And so him and Mike went down, and then I followed like a month or so later.
So you guys all got the place?
Yeah, it was me, Mike, Matt. I'm still friends with Matt. Was from Connecticut, and then some other dude we called the Bat because he'd stay up all night on acid and hear weird noises and shit coming out of his room, and just like, what's up with this? What's he building in there? We have a right to know.
Well, I was gonna call it a bachelor pad, but that doesn't do it justice. It sounds like you guys were like actually interesting.
Some of us were. The Bat was interesting, to say the least. Yeah, it was that. We went there, then we broke off everybody. I think Mike and Avery went and lived over by San Francisco State. I ended up living with a childhood buddy for a minute, but I was dating somebody, then her and I got our money together, and we went and got our own place.
Just quickly going back, where was that first place that y'all got from the board?
It was in the Western Edition. It was on Broderick at Geary, between Geary and, Western Edition. But back then, it was like, we were the only non-black folks there at that time in 1982, I think this was. So it was the hood. You go down to Divisadero, where I ended up. Art lived a few blocks down at Divisit McAllister, and it was just there was a gas station down there back then. There was a whole bunch of barbecue joints that were good. So it was. I used to go up and down that spot.
I think Brother-in-Law's was the last one.
Yeah.
And then, there's one now, but it's different.
It's not that where they are was. I know the one you're talking about on the corner there. I forgot what his.
That was Brother-in-Law.
Yeah, it was Brother.
In the early 2000s.
Yeah, and it was something else before that. And then there was even a place I liked a little better, crossing whatever that street is. A few doors in was the Arkansas Razorback. That place was awesome. Oh, and that breakfast spot, what is it, Eddie's or whatever it's called? Yeah, that was there then. And
the Flying Spaghetti Monsters.
yeah.
I'm guessing Popeyes wasn't there yet.
No, Popeyes was there. In fact, Bus Stop Pizza, if it's still up there, we were up back on Divisadero at Haight. It's
I think Bus Stop is still there.
Yeah, I'd been living there like a year when it first opened.
Okay.
So our housemate Matt used to pop by and get the cheap beers or pizzas so I see it now. I'm going, oh my god, place is fucking old, man. Yeah.
And were you guys drinking yet?
Oh hell yeah! Come on, man. Yeah.
Bars?
Oh yeah. I was of legal age. I mean, I always looked younger than I am, which is. For me, wasn't fun, especially when I got towards 30 and I'm getting carded by guys younger than me.
Yeah.
It's like, fuck you, man. It's, I've done my time.
Right.
So,
can you name drop a couple, 2 or 3 places y'all would drink?
Okay, well, I'd follow these guys around at first. We would go drink with them up on Clement Street, and our favorite bar we'd start at was Churchill's. It's no longer there. Okay. And speaking of barbecues, Leon's Barbecue was right. The firehouse was right across the street, and then we'd start there and have decent drinks, and then we'd Clement, like 7th or 8th or somewhere in there. And then the Holy City Zoo or whatever was across the road. And there was another bar next to them. The Starry Plow was back. Up on Geary, we'd end up, there was Ireland 32s, because Matt, our housemate, Matthew McGuire Kelly, might be Irish. Yeah, so I loved hanging out with Matt. Because when you went with Matt, you weren't paying. Matt says he demanded to pay. And then if things were going really rough, we ended up at the Abbey Tavern. Oh, yeah. That was the final spot. Yeah. And we're talking close to 40 years ago now. But yeah, those were the spots there.
That would have been back in the 80s.
Yeah, the early 80s.
Early 80s.
Yeah. The other places I would drink would be not bars, but was the punk scene. Art and I were hanging out with all these people, so we would drink at the Vats. Have you guys ever heard of the Vats? No. Oh, man, it's historic. It was an old, I think it was the old Falstaff Brewery over south of Market, kind of towards the Mission. And they had all these vats that they would rent out, and all the punk bands, like, MDC. Who else was there for a minute? I'm spacing. Well, DRI was there, since I mentioned both those guys earlier. The Dead Kennedys had their own joint. The Slug Lords were there because I was one of their, I think I was their last guitar player. Oh. And that was Darren from the Dead Kennedys and Willie from the Nuns. It was their band. But that's a whole another kettle of fish.
What were some of your favorite bands now that you started?
From then, there was a band called Condemned to Death. Local. Okay. C2D. I really liked them. Tim was a guitar player. It's funny in bands, like all the guys, like all the drummers hang out together. Like all those guitar players hung out. And I know how to fiddle on guitars a little bit, no pun intended. So I would work on Tim's guitar a little bit. Like, I know how to fix the truss rod on that. And, so, yeah, we got to be good friends. Fact, story with him. He got this bitchin' tattoo, a profile of the Bride of Frankenstein, done by none other than Greg Irons. Okay. And I was with him that night. And Greg Irons, famous tattooist and underground cartoonist. Mm-hmm. So I knew him from the cartooning world. So I was with him. I was like, damn, dude, I got this old gang tattoo I want to get rid of on my back that we did. And I showed it to him. He goes, you guys want to use a needle? And I go, yeah, and a lot of Schlitz malt liquor. That's how that one went in. So he goes, yeah, what do you want? And I go, well, I want like a Jose Guadalupe Posada, the skeleton, print, which I have under now. So he says, all right, so it's going to be about 6 months or so. You're going to be, put my name in there. And then he was split a month later and was killed in wherever it was, Bangkok or someplace he was at, somewhere in the Far East. And so there you go. But Tim got his tattoo. Yeah, and it came out cool. It came out really cool. I always wonder what became of Tim. He's a nice guy. So.
God, my mind is kind of racing because now we're talking about tattoos, but also we haven't even talked about your making art yet.
Oh, right.
Do we have to go back?
Origin of that? Well, I mean, the easy answer for that is I've been drawing as long as I can remember.
Right.
The family joke is that my first art show was around 3 years old, and it was in my mom's Bible. My mom was hugely Catholic, and she had a white Bible, and somehow I guess I got a hold of a ballpoint pen, and books, that was the leaf or whatever, there's a couple blank pages and then you have whatever. Yeah. And so I used those, and I guess I thought I thought I did a good rendering of our cat, and of my dad's car or whatever, looks good, and right, exactly. I have a story about that in the Catholic school too. But so I needless to say, that's been called my first art show, and it was soundly squashed. The critics panned it, which was my mom. So yeah.
The blasphemous angle?
Oh yeah, just the whole nine, man. It's like, why did you do that? And I'm 3. I'm like, I don't know,
That was Jaime Crespo. Check back Thursday for the next episode of Storied San Francisco, when Jaime will continue the story of his life. Music for the podcast was produced, performed, and curated by Otis McDonald. Original photography is by Michelle Kilfeather. Aaron Lim of Bitch Talk Podcast is our contributing producer. And the show is produced and hosted by me, Jeff Hunt. Now in our 4th season, We have more than 150 episodes available on our website, storiedsf.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you can, subscribe, rate, and review our show so we can reach even more folks. And if you'd like to drop us an old-fashioned email, we'd love that. The address is storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay strong, stay healthy, and we'll see you next time.
This podcast is a proud member of the BFF.FM podcast network. Learn more at podcast.bff.fm.
BFF.FM, best frequencies forever.